So, Mr. Nastios, again, would you consider yourself liberal or woke in any way?
No.
Okay, great. Do you believe that USAID is a criminal agency plagued by waste, fraud, and abuse?
No.
And on February 4th, nearly the entire USAID workforce was notified that they were being placed on administrative leave. Mr. Natsios, would you say that removing the majority of the staff responsible for overseeing USAID's programs increases or decreases the risk of waste, fraud, and abuse?
Well, it increases it because the oversight of AID officers are there for oversight. That's what they do. 40% of the staff of AID are compliance officers. They spend all day trying to make sure these things don't happen. They do happen sometimes because of where we work.
And the USAID Inspector General agreed with you as the ranking member entered into the record, stated that all of USAID's oversight controls are largely non-operational. But instead of addressing this problem, Trump actually fired the Inspector General, who released this report the very next day. Mr. Natsios, does firing USAID's Inspector General generally reduce or increase waste, fraud, and abuse?
Well, Congresswoman, I'm trying to stay out of the vitriol here, but the Inspector General is there to investigate abuse. And let me tell you how it works. People think that they watch us and then they find this stuff and then they arrest us and all. That's not how it works. The 80% of the investigations done by aid are initiated by aid compliance officers who call the IG and say there's a problem, you need to come in here and fix it.
They want to encourage women to have abortions. And what is an abortion, Mr. Speaker? It's killing babies. I've said it on the floor before. The word abortion sounds so clinical, so clean, but we need to say what it is. It is killing babies up to the point of their birth. This is not an extreme piece of legislation. It is a sensible piece of legislation, and every person in this body should vote for it if you care about life. If you don't care about life, if all you want to do is destroy life, then vote no. That's the radical side. We're not the radical people.
I can't help but chuckle at the ridiculous arguments coming from the other side of the aisle, because while I'll admit that my Republican colleagues are good at naming bills, they are not good at caring for parents or kids after they're born. This so-called Pregnant Students' Rights Act, ironically, fails to give pregnant students any new rights. It gives them no meaningful information or support, like campus childcare, family housing, or nutrition support, if they choose to be pregnant or parent while in school. Instead, it provides a biased slate of options that push students to keep their pregnancy and raise a child with no mention of contraception or that seeking an abortion is a viable and valid choice. Whereas on November 1st, 2023, during a speech on the House floor, Representative Brian Mast stated that, quote, there are very few innocent Palestinian civilians.
I would encourage the other side to not so lightly throw around the idea of innocent Palestinian civilians, as is frequently said. I don't think we would so lightly throw around the term innocent Nazi civilians during World War II. I would ask that it be looked at through that lens, that there's not this far stretch to say there are very few innocent Palestinian civilians. I haven't seen the videos of the innocent Palestinian civilians that were out there trying to protect the Israelis, that were out there trying to stop the attacks, trying to get the captives returned instead of being taken into tunnel systems.
Representative Brian Mast's comments regarding innocent Palestinian civilians in Gaza are dehumanizing, inflammatory, unacceptable, and can be reasonably construed as inviting the targeted murder of innocent Palestinians, fanning the flames of violence in the Middle East, and violating the international rules of war. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Brian Mast be censured. Madam Speaker, pursuant to Clause 2A1 of Rule 9, I rise to give notice of my intention to raise a question of the privileges of the House. The form of the resolution is as follows: House Resolution 846, censuring Representative Brian Mast.
Under Rule 9, a resolution.
Whereas Representative Brian Mast served honorably in the United States Army with distinct sacrifice, dedication, and bravery. Whereas Representative Brian Mast has repeatedly made inflammatory statements regarding innocent Palestinian civilians in Gaza who are in harm's way through no fault of their own as a result of horrific terrorist attacks conducted by Hamas on October 7, 2023. Whereas Representative Brian Mast's refusal to distinguish innocent Palestinians from Hamas terrorists is false, misleading, dehumanizing, dangerous, and unbecoming of a member of Congress. Whereas on October 19, 2023, during a House Foreign Affairs Committee markup, Representative Brian Mast emphatically asserted that any urgently needed humanitarian aid for innocent Palestinian civilians who are in harm's way through no fault of their own should, quote, be slowed down, and that there should be, quote, every effort made to slow down any perceived assistance.
Because I would challenge anybody in here to point to me which Palestinian is Hamas and which one is an innocent civilian. Which is the one, the child that was poking the Israeli children, the children that were poking other Israeli children, and which ones exactly are the innocent ones? Which are the ones that were standing by somewhere along the border saying, no, turn around. No, return that person. No, don't take that person hostage. No, don't conduct that rape, that murder, that beheading, that whatever. It should absolutely be every effort made to slow down any perceived assistance that's going there and to perhaps bring in equivalencies in some part. Have the conversation of, would this be something we would talk about immediately following Pearl Harbor or immediately following 9/11?
Whereas on October 19, 2023, during the same House Foreign Affairs Committee markup, Representative Brian Mast stated that terrorism is, and I quote, absolutely supported by the Palestinian people from elementary school all the way up into the elderly. Whereas on November 1st, 2023, during a speech on the House floor, Representative Brian Mast inexcusably.
The House will be in order. The gentlewoman is recognized.
Whereas on November 1st, 2023, during a speech on the House floor, Representative Brian Mast inexcusably compared innocent Palestinian civilians, including children, who are often used as human shields by Hamas terrorists, to Nazi collaborators that perpetrated the Holocaust against the Jewish people. Whereas the horrific crime against humanity perpetrated by Nazis that resulted in the murder of more than 6 million Jews during the Holocaust should never be trivialized. Whereas on November 2nd, 2023, Representative Brian Mast again incorrectly conflated innocent Palestinian civilians with Hamas terrorists by tweeting a video of a Hamas leader and asserting that, I quote again, a two-state solution means making a state out of these murderous terrorists who are openly calling for the atrocities of October 7th to be committed over and over again. Whereas Representative Brian Mast's repeated conflation of innocent Palestinian civilians with Hamas terrorists sends a message to the world that violence against all Palestinians is legitimate and risks the incitement of brutal attacks across the Middle East region, including settler violence in the West Bank and Hezbollah aggression in northern Israel. Whereas instances of anti-Arab hate and Islamophobia have been on the rise, including the hate-fueled murder of Wadia El-Fayyoumi, a 6-year-old Palestinian American who was stabbed to death in his home in Illinois on October 15, 2023 because of his identity. And whereas Representative Brian Mast's comments regarding innocent Palestinian civilians in Gaza are dehumanizing, inflammatory, unacceptable, and can be reasonably construed as inviting the targeted murder of innocent Palestinians, fanning the flames of violence in the Middle East, and violating the international rules of war. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Brian Mast be censured.
I'm aghast. I'm just aghast at how this bill is being characterized. It's being called an extreme piece of legislation. We want pregnant students to be supported on their campuses and to know that they can be supported. It has nothing to do with criminalizing abortions. It has nothing to do with a nationwide abortion ban. Our colleagues on the other side of the aisle say something about healthy babies. What is better than this? We need pregnant women to have good resources and good health care so they can have healthy babies. But they want what they call comprehensive information to women.
We are just a few days from what would have been the anniversary of Roe v. Wade. So it's sadly predictable that we're here debating MAGA Republicans' bill that would stigmatize students who parent while in school or seek abortion care. Pregnant and parenting students deserve comprehensive information about their rights and the resources and support they need to thrive at school. What they don't need is lectures about their choices. They don't need obstacles to accessing abortion and the full spectrum of health care, and they certainly don't need this condescending legislation that's more interested in advancing an anti-abortion agenda than genuinely helping students. The decisions about keeping a pregnancy to term and raising a child are serious, private, and personal. Women denied an abortion are 4 times more likely to live below the federal poverty line. They're more likely to be evicted, go bankrupt, and have debt. They're more likely to stay in contact with a violent partner and raise the resulting child alone. And their children's financial well-being and development are more likely to suffer too.
I now recognize the representative from California, Ms. Jacobs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, a question for my colleagues. I know all of us probably remember Ebola from the 2014 outbreak that President Trump, a private citizen at the time, was particularly outspoken about and terrified of. For those of you who don't remember, Ebola is a disease that has about a 41% fatality rate, no vaccine, no treatment. It causes vomiting, muscle pain, and hemorrhagic bleeding. Pretty bad. I'd like all of my colleagues, please raise your hand if you would like Ebola in the United States. No one?
You say your question again?
Would you like Ebola in the United States?
I'm glad the Trump administration approved Ebola response in
Yes,
their waivers.
on that point, I ask for unanimous consent to enter into the record a New York Times article, Life-Saving Aid Remains Halted Worldwide Despite Rubio's Promise.
So ordered, but it's not if you want to see the list.
And on Tuesday, Elon Musk, the billionaire tech entrepreneur empowered by President Trump to combat the agency, I'm quoting the article now, told reporters in the Oval Office that the administration had turned on funding for Ebola prevention and for HIV prevention. But in reality, again, quoting this article, the Ebola funding and virtually all of the HIV prevention funding remains frozen, according to USAID employees and several aid groups. And that is because the payment system called Phoenix that USAID relies on to disperse financial assistance has been inaccessible for weeks. So as you may know, Mr. Natsios, the outbreak of diseases, infectious diseases, is one of the big things that USAID helps to prevent, which is why I think we all should be so horrified that because of Elon Musk's illegal takeover of USAID, USAID is no longer able to screen travelers at airports leaving Uganda, where there is currently an Ebola outbreak that Americans have already been infected by. Mr. Natsios, you led USAID, correct? Do you think stopping the screening of travelers makes America more or less safe?
It makes us less safe, but I would add that there is, over the last 30 years, we built a system in 90 southern countries for monitoring all infectious diseases, and that's the early warning system. So if an outbreak of any disease takes place, we know about it. The countries where, like China, where COVID started, I certainly wouldn't advocate having an AID mission there, but the countries where there's an aid mission, the ministries of health have been trained, and there's a comprehensive early warning system to protect us. That system is, in terms of AID support for it, has been shut down.
That's right.
I might also add.
Sorry, I just want to reclaim my time because I have a few more questions, but I completely agree with you. So let's take my Republican colleagues at your word. You want to reduce waste, fraud, and abuse. I agree with that. You want to reform how USAID does its work. I agree with that too. In fact, I have bipartisan legislation to do that I'm happy to work with you, Mr. Mast, on. Just to clarify, not only is this freeze endangering Americans, but Trump and Musk's argument for stopping this assistance to reduce waste, fraud, and abuse is a complete lie because they are doing the opposite. That's because this is not about oversight. It's not about reform. It's about completely gutting foreign assistance itself. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.